Dr. Wu, and welcome everyone to join us and for today's education webinar. And I think this is the second webinar for our series educational webinar. Yeah, and today we are very honored to have our I think also old friend and the Dr. Huang to here and to go out talk about rapid disaster mapping and the damage assessment by following remote sensing, social science, and the machine learning. I think this is a very hot topic here, and also I know a lot of students are very interested in this topic because machine learning and also like disaster management is a very hot topic at the current time. I think yes, and I need to take a very short introduction about Dr. Qunying Huang. Dr. Qunying Huang is the associate professor in the Department of Geography and the University of Wisconsin Medicine, and leads the social computing and the data mining lab. And Dr. Huang got a lot. Have a lot of papers. I think many papers has been very familiar with our students. And Dr. Huang's research interest is about natural hazards and human mobility, and also got a lot of fundings by NSF of US and also other fundings. So let's welcome Dr. Huang. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Let me share my screen.
Yeah.
Let me see which side. See my interface?
Yeah. Very good. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for the chair and the organizing committee putting us together. Last week, Dr. Wang gave a wonderful talk on how to leverage crowdsourcing effort to collect aerial images as well as labels for model training. So in today's the educational webinar, I will introduce some of the method to deal with the remote sensing image as well as the social media data coupled with the machine learning. In particular, I will first introduce the challenge raised while utilizing the social remote sensing image and the machine learning for rapid disaster management as well as the damage assessment. And I will introduce several case research performed in our lab to provide hopefully potential solutions to address those challenges, followed by social media data as well as the machine learning processing to extract the situational awareness information as well as the damage assessment image classification. Finally, I will quickly summarize the trend, also the development I observe in the field of disaster mapping and the damage assessment from the perspective of data, methodology, as well as the applications. First, let's start with why we do natural hazard, why disaster. And that actually goes back to in the last couple of years, we have witnessed an increased number of natural hazards. In fact, according to the NOAA statistic analysis, on the past 10 years, on average, there is more than 12 number of disaster natural hazard occurred of significant impact. By significant, we mean there is at least $1 billion of economic loss and or even more than 50 people of fatalities. Worldwide, we also see similar patterns. Here is a statistic indicate on average in the past 10 years, there are more than 600 number of natural hazards occurred with economic loss more than $1 million. Among all the natural hazards, actual flooding is one of the most frequent and costly natural disasters in the US as well as across the global area, according to the statistic provided by FEMA in the US as well as the United Nations. For example, between 1995 to 2015, there is 43% of natural hazard actually is a result of flooding. And according to a recent study published in the Nature, indicated that the annual flooding cost is projected to increase 26% with the total economic loss to 40.6 billion by 2050 as a result of climate change only. That's the reason that my research mostly focused on the flooding hazard mapping and damage assessment. In the time of natural hazard, we rely on datasets collected from both, I would say, physical remote sensing network as well as the social sensing network. For the physical sensing, we can utilize the satellite data, UAV data, camera, traffic monitor network, smart cars. And these data sets, since we are actively collect them, those are considered as active data source. And the next type of data source is the social sensing. For example, data sets collected from social media platform, Twitter, Flickr, Facebook, Wikipedia, and video stream from YouTube. Since users are not actively contribute to the disaster management, but they just share their personal experience, we can see such data source as the passive data collection. First, let me introduce the challenge utilize active physical remote sensing datasets and machine learning for rapid disaster mapping and the damage assessment. The first challenge comes from the heterogeneous image background presented in the remote sensing image due to urban physical structure building landscape, and resulting in a lot of noise presented in the image background, which could also caused by the cloud shadows. Another issue is floodwater may display different pixel values. For example, the pixels within the red and blue circles actually are all flood waters, but they have very different pixel values. The second challenge actually comes from the traditional machine learning require handcraft feature engineering. Typical features we rely on derived from spectral indexes such as NDWI or modified NDWI, because floodwater have a high reflection at the green band and high absorption or low reflection at the near infrared as well as middle infrared band. However, the manual extract feature result in low performance for the machine learning due to noise and the shadows in the image, as well as especially it is difficult to capture detailed texture and edge structure information, especially for high resolution remote sensing image. While the deep learning-based method addresses the handcraft feature engineering required for traditional machine learning, however, it requires a large number of samples to obtain good performance. It even takes more than 3 hours for an expert to label a small area of image for model training. So this is a really time-consuming process. The next common limitation is poor model generalizability, which means if we train the model on one data set and one flood events, however, the model cannot generalize well for another event, another site, for example, Florence, North Carolina area. So let me just followed by introducing several case studies research within our group to indicate the potential solution to address those limitation challenges present in existing work. The first work we done is develop a supervised learning language by developing patch similarity convolutional neural network, which divide pre and post disaster image into patches and classify each patch as flood or non-flood by calculating the similarity between the pre-flood patch and the post-flood patch. Here we develop two PathNet architecture. The first architecture, we concatenated the feature rendered through the encoding process. After the encoding process, the second architecture, we first concatenate the pre and the post flood image first before going through the encoding process. To evaluate our PathNet model, we utilize two case studies, including Huang and Florence. The datasets we collect is from the PlanetScope satellite with a spatial resolution 3 by 3 meters from the Planet Lab. Evaluate with different case study as well as baseline models such as support vector machine, decision tree, random forest, adder boost. It indicates that the proposed PathNet model can achieve high performance across all different evaluation scores, such as recall F1, overall accuracy for both Hurricane Harvey and Florence. The result indicate that urban flood mapping is possible with only a few human labels that can be complete within 50 minutes, with 30 minutes to label the training sample, 50 minutes to train the model, and 1 minute to produce the flooding maps. While PathNet can achieve relatively high performance compared to the traditional learning model, however, it still belongs to the supervised learning, require the labeling effort, which even though only take about half an hour, and motivated by the real-time as well as the requirement for real-time mapping, we then investigate the self-supervised learning. In this framework, patch features are learned through a self-supervised autoencoder architecture, which require no manual annotation for model training process, particularly given a pair of pre and post-disaster image, we cut them into small patches, which each patch include about 10 by 10 pixels, and then go through the autoencoder process. And in the end, we generate, through the render feature, we can generate patch change map, which further then finalized into flood or non-flood. We also developed two post-processing optimization strategy, including spectral filtering and spatial filtering to remove false positives. Evaluate with a different strategy, including post-processing, the model indicate and can achieve performance that is comparable to supervised learning. The result indicate that real-time flooding mapping is possible with a fully self or unsupervised model. The model can achieve strong performance without handcraft and feature engineering, and also have achieved good generalizability across both Huang and Florence sites. The next effort we focus on is develop weak labels to train the model automatically instead of utilize human labels. So here is the workflow to generate weak labels to train our model. First, given pre and post flood image, we also cut them into different patches. And for each patch, we calculate the change map based on NDWI index. Next step is we create a binary flood map based on thresholding as well as the k-mean method to produce the binary map. However, the change not necessarily result from the flood, right? There are many moving objects, shadows, noise information, which are false positive. So in that case, we develop a spatial filtering process, utilize the Qunying edge detection and morphological operators to remove those small isolated non-flooded related change, followed by Gaussian filtering to generate weak labels, which further then fit into the proposed bi-temporal UNet models. Traditional UNet model actually can only assimilate one input in the architecture, which limits its application and the performance. As such, we revised the architecture to enable it to assimilate both pre and post-flood image, which will be cut into different patches, go through the downsample encoding process. At the end of the encoding layer, we concatenate them, and all those features will go through decoding process. Again, we evaluate the bitemporal UNet model as well as weak labels with the two case study, Harvey and Florence. For both case study, we cut two areas, H1 and H2, F1 and F2 as the testing sites. All the rest area are the training sites. Let's look into one model evaluation, utilize Florence case as a study. Based on the performance evaluation, our proposed bitemporal UNet model compared with the traditional UNet decision tree random forest gradient boosting classifier at the boost, our model achieved relatively high performance across different evaluation metrics. And here is another interesting result. For the F1 and F2, they are of different heterogeneous background, which means there is different degree of urbanization. F1 is more urbanized compared to F2. Our model actually achieved better performance improvement compared with baseline model, such as random forest, with improvement of almost 7% and 3.4% for F1 and F2 site accordingly. Another interesting pattern we observe for F2 site is that the model actually failed to detect the permanent water body, differentiate them from the flood water body. So here is false positive here, indicate green color. And so which give us insight for potential improvement is remove permanent water body before the model training in the subsequent effort. The entire process, the weak labels can be automatically generated within 2 minutes. And subsequent effort is we follow by the physical informed, the previous physical informed weekly supervised learning is we integrate spatial temporal spectral knowledge to produce weak labels. In particular, for the spatial, we utilize the FEMA flood hazard layer as well as Microsoft building footprints help us to identify location with high risk of flooding. And we leverage pre and post flood image to detect the change areas, which are the potential flood area as well. And we utilize the spectral clustering method to indicate the water area. By overlay 3 layers, we can identify weak labels, which further train our machine learning classification models. To evaluate our weak labels, we evaluate a different combination and the fusion of different knowledge, including spatial, temporal, and spectral. So here, with all different knowledge, our F1 have the best score, which indicated higher performance for both site, Harvey and Florence site. And the performance actually is quite fascinating since our weak labels can have more than 98% of accuracy. We also evaluate a different machine learning model while training our weak labels to produce flooding maps. And the result, again, is very promising, more than 96% accuracy for F1 scores for both sites. Also, we explore the global mapping capability, which means we train our weak labels, we utilize the data sets generated from within the United States and the map and test them in the site across the global area. For example, the Australia, Germany, China, Sudan, and Argentina. The result indicate our spatial temporal spectral knowledge informed the weak supervision can achieve high performance without the human labels, no handcraft feature engineer required, and it is suitable for perform global mapping with good generalizability. In addition to flood mapping, we also then work on the damage assessment. One of the examples is we develop a spatial temporal constructive representation learning, which can automatically learn feature of building damage without the label data. The model can classify the building into no damage, minor damage, major damage, destroyed. The key idea is select a positive pair and the negative pair to train the constructive model learning process. In the one of the contribution of this work is actually we leverage the first law of geography to inform the positive and the negative pair model selection. For example, the closer the distance of two image pairs, the more likely they are positive pair, right? And the more far away, they are more likely negative pairs. And we also leverage geographic context to help us select the positive and the negative pairs, utilize, for example, land use type, physical infrastructure type to inform of the selection process. Now, let me introduce some of the research as well as the challenge utilize social media data for situational awareness, information extraction, as well as damage assessment, image classification. First, the challenge is well known. We have 5 V challenges, include massive volume generated from the social media platform, such as in Twitter. We generate 400 million tweets per day. And the second one is velocity. The third is veracity. And finally, which is the most challenging one, is value. How can derive information from massive data sets generated from the social media platform? Actually, in the context of disaster management, the useful information that can contribute to disaster management is considered as a situational awareness information. Information such as damage, donation offer, information source, resource request, caution advice, fatality. Those are considered useful information can contribute to disaster response, recovery, and impact, damage impact effort. So basically, during our prior study, we unfortunately found that majority of data sets we collect from a social media the platform are noise, which means that they are not disaster relevant. In fact, there is only 2.70% of information are disaster relevant. Among this small amount of disaster relevant information, there is less than 1% of information, situation awareness information that can contribute to disaster management. So how can we quickly extract those valuable information to help our disaster management effort? We typically rely on 2 steps. The first one is utilize simple NLP or keywords method to filter out non-disaster relevant information. For example, we can utilize a hashtag to identify useful information, followed by advanced NLP, natural language processing, and the machine learning model, which will build a classification model to separate situational awareness information versus non-situational awareness information, remove potential noise. In our early effort, actually couple of years ago, our pioneering work is starting the Hurricane Sandy. So we collected 176 million of geotagged tweets, utilize hashtags, actually more than 57 hashtags. We retrieve only small number of geotagged tweets that's related to Hurricane Sandy, about 2.170%, right? And then we randomly sample 11,000 labels to train a machine learning model that can automatically classify the data sets, the message into different categories that within different stage of disaster management, including preparedness, response, impact, recovery. One of the major contribution of this work actually is we literally manually examine those 38,000 tweets in order to identify what's the nature of the message posted during the disaster. So we identify all those categories potentially can help in the disaster management effort, such as information related to prepare plans, shelters, in the response stage, clean up information, organization, housing, food, power, all those information that potentially can be used for contribute to the disaster management. We also develop a geospatial visualization portal, so we can visualize the message posted on social media platform of different category for different disaster events, spatial temporally. In a subsequent effort, we develop a deep learning-based model to support cross-event classification. The contribution of this model is that the model trained on historical data sets is suitable to classify data sets generalized from future events, which means the model addresses the generalizability issues. For example, we can train the model utilize 7D data sets to forecasting or classify the data sets generated during the Harvey, Sandy to Irma, and compared to traditional machine learning models such as support the vector machine and logistic regression, the model achieve much better performance across different evaluation metrics. And if we combine multiple historical events such as Sandy and Harvey, we can achieve even higher performance. While previous model can address the generalization ability as well as achieve relatively high performance, however, there is one common issue which limited its application performance as well is those models rely text-only based features, which have several limitations. For example, the text may misspelling, not utilize popular hashtags. So at the initial simple process, we filled out those useful information that potentially can contribute to the disaster management. Many post messages doesn't have text at all. In that case, we develop a geographic context-aware text mining to integrate spatial temporal features into the text mining classification process. Those features can be derived from a variety of data sources from social media platform itself, physical remote sensing data sets, observation data sets, official sites such as storm reports, physical simulation models. From those data sets, we can derive different temporal as well as spatial features such as distance, storm category, precipitation, wind, flood, warning, all those information then can be fed into the model training process. The next effort is, instead of utilize supervised learning, we develop unsupervised learning framework in order to extract quickly identify useful information that can contribute to situational awareness. So this framework have one important component. Also, the contribution of our work is we leverage coherence metrics to evaluate, to help us identify, because the most difficult part for the LDA model is identify the optimal number of topics to do the unsupervised classification, right? So our coherence metrics address that problem by optimally identify the number of cluster needed. And also we develop a topic visualization tool to integrate domain knowledge from the expert to manually examine whether the extracted topics is making sense, and they can manually adjust the associated parameters to get the optimal result. In addition to utilize the text, we also leverage image information posted from social media to do the disaster mapping and the damage assessment. One of the interesting projects actually is utilize the image. We can identify flood water depth detection and the mapping. The idea is based on the reference objects such as the buildings, humans, vehicles, traffic signs, as well as lamp post. We can identify, utilize machine learning computer vision process. We can identify the proportion of the object above the water as well as below the water. Even the reference object, actually there is different challenges. For example, if we utilize the human body as the reference object, the key challenge part is how to accurately detect the 70 key body key points, for example, the head, shoulder, knees, and the feet. And also another challenge is how can we identify the height of the human body? So what we utilize is computer vision techniques to extract the race information as well as the gender information to identify potential height of the human body, eventually based on the key human points, identify the flood depths. If we utilize the building as a reference objects, the first challenge is we collect the post-flooding image from the social media platform, right? And we need to get a disaster image from other sources such as Google Street View image, the internet. The second challenge we address is the pre and the post flood image. Actually, they are taken from a different angle by different photos, different people, right? So we need to do the image rectification process in order to make the image comparable, and which help us further extract the proportion of building underlying the water. The next step we did is integrate not just the image or text. We fuse them together in order to extract the disaster relevant information as well as perform damage assessment. So first step, what we do is integrate both text and the image to extract the disaster relevant information. Followed by second step is extract the situation awareness relevant information. The third step is if the image is related to infrastructure or utility damage or vehicle damage, then we do the damage assessment, automatically classify the image into different damage levels. Another activity we done is for the image classification of different category, right? We utilize a self-supervised learning based on pre-trained model, MOCO, compared with the traditional supervised learning, our model even achieve relatively higher performance while classify them as informative and not informative. Now, let me quickly summarize the patterns and the trend I observed in the field of disaster mapping, damage assessment, as well as situational awareness, which can be categorized into 3 categories from data, methodology, and application. First, the data set. On the data side, we can see that a large number of massive data sets are collected not just from official sites such as USGS, NASA, FEMA, NOAA, but a large number of them are collected by crowdsourcing effort contributed by the citizens in the social media platform. Those data sets are dynamically generated with the heterogeneous formats and which are unstructured in nature. Accordingly, in order to handle those massive data sets with the 5V challenge, right, our method has to keep up. As a result, we can see that the traditional, for example, the remote sensing image will rely on manual feature extraction, such as NDWI, normalize NDWI to identify flooded area. Gradually, we utilize the machine learning model to train those features to improve the accuracy of flood mapping. Eventually, we utilize deep learning-based model to automatically discover the features for model training. In the model training part, we go from the supervised learning, which means even though we utilize either traditional machine learning model, those models require a large number of human effort on the labeling process. So we develop a self-supervised and a weekly supervised learning process without the effort of human intervention for the model training part. In the process of model training, the input gradually grow from a single mode, such as the text, image features to feed into the model. Then we have a multi-module input, including both, for example, text and image features into the situation awareness extraction. And gradually, we have multi-source, multi-modal data fusion. For example, we can integrate the data source from the remote sensing, social media, POI data sets for the disaster mapping, damage assessment, and other effort for the disaster relevant applications. For the machine, traditionally, initially, we as a geography will borrow the machine and the AI models from the computer science to train the model, right? And gradually, we are not and at this step, we integrate the spatial data sets, spatial features, as well as the spatial principles to generate GeoAI models. Gradually, we hope that we will make a further movement, develop expandable, interpretable GeoAI models. In that case, the model, especially the deep learning model, is no longer a black box to us. All the parameters and the performance are explainable, interpretable to us. With the advancement of data sets and methodology, keeping up our application on the disaster mapping damage assessment can be performing, for example, high resolution and near even real-time global mapping skills for the disaster mapping and the damage assessment. Well, taking this opportunity, I want to acknowledge my sponsors as well as the wonderful students in my group, Peng Bo, Jam, Chris Zuling, etc., as well as my collaborators. Well, in the next week and the next week, we have 4 excellent presenters continue this conversation about natural hazard as well as in the with the application of mostly in for example, in the environmental justice resilience. So from a data sets collection to method to resilience, and we have a complete story here. So hope you will join. If you are not a CPGIS member, please join our group. And also we have a WeChat group focus on the natural hazard. And well, I will stop here. If there is any question, I'm happy to answer.
Yeah, and thanks, Dr. Huang. And I will also take this opportunity to invite our friend. If you are not CPGIS members, please join us. And oh yeah, I forgot to introduce myself at the beginning. And my name is Ming Chen, and I'm from Nanjing Normal University, and I'm now the exclusive editor of our CPGIS official journal, and also GIS, and also I'm the elected president of our CPGIS. The next year will be my turn. Yeah. So I also would like to take this opportunity to invite us all of our friends and members to support our NSO GIS. Yes, this is like yeah. And back to our talk, and I think Dr. Huang gave us a very wonderful talk, and so I think because we have like 50 minutes, so I think first the floor is open. Any questions? Yeah, if you have any question, you can open your camera, and you can also type your questions in the text box. Yeah.
No question, which means I make myself very clear.
Yeah, I think very wonderful. Yeah, yeah. I saw someone open the camera. Yeah.
Hi, Dr. Huang. Nice to meet you virtually. Thank you so much for your wonderful presentation. I was very impressed with how comprehensive your research is. So your talk touched upon several aspects of natural hazards, the physics, the social, and you talked about how to utilize big data to assess these different aspects. I was wondering if you could share some of your thoughts about the future direction of combining, integrating these different dimensions of hazards through big data and machine learning, artificial intelligence in general.
Oh, that's a good question. So basically, I think here the last slides give some. Am I still sharing my interface?
Yeah, and yes.
Yeah. So basically, I would think in future, in the right now, one example is for the flood mapping, right, and the damage assessment with remote sensing data sets. We primarily utilize remote sensing, but in future, I think the data fusion will be multi-source data fusion. And our next effort actually is plan utilize the social media platform, social media data sets for the integrate along with the remote sensing data as well to enhance, because for those, especially if there is a social media post, those media, if we identify this is the flooded area, those actually are useful for one direction, is helpful to remove the false positive generated from a remote sensing data sets. Another side is also, we are thinking building a framework automatically to integrate the social media data sets as well in the model training process. So one effort indeed is what we are planning to do is integrate multi-source, multi-model data fusion in the damage assessment as well as disaster mapping.
Yeah, you are mute. You can.
Yeah. You are.
You are mute. We cannot hear you. Yeah.
Yeah, they should be able to unmute themselves. I think the setting is that they can unmute. Oh, 1 second. Yeah, they should be able to unmute now.
Okay, thank you so much for your explanation. So may I ask you a follow-up question? So especially for your second part, the methodology, you mentioned that integrating this data from different sources. Can I understand it as that you are going to use data from a different source to validate data from one source to validate the data from a different source? Do you use that approach to cross-validation?
Yeah, actually, that's a very good point. Is potentially that for example, the social media data sets that can be used to do the cross validation as well. If what we just discussed is if the flood mapping detected by remote sensing data sets, right? It is flooded, but the social media data sets another story. Then we can tell cross-evaluate it. Especially, I think if we leverage remote sensing data set to validate social media data sets, that possibly could be more useful because the social media data sets are always criticized because of their passive data collection purpose. People may take photos at one site and post later at a different site. So basically utilize remote sensing image extracted information that can be more kind of more official, authoritative to validate the social media data sets. That's one for sure good direction to go.
Yeah. Thanks for your question, and we still have some questions in the text box.
Yeah, and I see the Yang asked a question for whether those methods can be applied to other disasters, such as the landslides. I think the methodology should be applicable to different natural hazard. For example, the landslide, if by nature it is still land features, right, to indicate whether there is a landslide disaster occurring. So basically utilize remote sensing image, we still can develop for example, the patch net supervised learning as well as the unsupervised learning framework and automatically learn the features to detect the landslide applications. Yeah.
Another question about from Min Zhen Yang.
Yeah. Pre and post image selection. Minzhen asked the question about the pre and the post image selection. Do the selected dates of the post and the pre flood effect result? Yeah, actually that's a very good question. And let me go back to the slides of the first here. Actually, for the typically, in order because our model, the underlying fundamental is detect the change from the pre and the post flood image, right? And consider those changes as a result of flooding. So basically, we need to make sure the pre and the post disaster image are close enough at the temporal resolution. For example, this date is when the flooding occur in the Houston area. So we typically go further within 1 month area. So which means those 1 month, there is not too much change resulting other features. I think I forget the 10 here. This is 1 month period. It should be July 30 here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And any other questions from our audience? Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
you probably might notice, I'm not sure if you know that Facebook Meta they release a new like algorithm and source code. They call a segment anything.com. I sent the link over there. So it looks like it might also be applicable to some of your work here. Like basically you do segmentation and you can do change detection. Do you think this tool might be useful for your work, and how would you envision that this might be used to further simplify your workflow?
Yeah, thanks for the information. Actually, indeed, I'm actually looking for very good model to do the segmentation, especially for the case. I think the let me see, go to the.
Yeah, I saw some like posts on social media. They actually do like building detection. It does pretty well. So it's I think it's very impressive.
Yeah, especially if in the social media image processing, we do a lot of image segmentation, identify the bodies, the features, right? Within present in the image. Here, actually, we have due to the time constraint, I didn't mention that, especially if the objects present in the image, for example, there is the human body is very small, and the buildings is far away. We have trouble to extract those features correctly. So any advancement in the image segmentation, that would be really helpful to enhance the model accuracy.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. And I also have a question, and because my research interest is about modeling and simulation, so we done a lot of research about process modeling, you know. So now we are very focused on like machine learning and the two kind of models. So do you have some ideas how to couple these two kinds of models together for the prediction of our hazard?
Yeah, actually, that's a good question. We should collaborate together because I'm always thinking about the coupling the data-driven approach, which is exists the big data and the machine learning model, right? Combined with physical modeling process. So basically, hopefully, the physical modeling can be, for example, the data-driven model. For example, I can do the real-time identify the flooding areas, right? And then hopefully the input, the output of the data-driven model can be fed into the physical model, can calibrate the parameters of the model to similarly, the physical real-time produce the forecasting can further validate our data-driven model output, see whether the classify the flood area, whether it is accurate and consistent with the physical model. So I think there is a great future if we can really organically integrate the physical processing as well as the data-driven process in the data fusion process. At the level.
Yeah, I also think this is a very good research point in the future, because we have noticed that a lot of papers now have got some like a point with this research point. So yes, we can in the future we can find some chances to work together to just we recently have a paper, and it's in the second round in Nature Reviews environment and the geoscience. This is also about this topic, so maybe in the future we can find some like joint work in this direction. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And any other questions from our audience? We still have 2 minutes. Yeah.
Hi.
And Dr. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Huang. Excellent presentation, a lot of achievements, and also perfect delivery of the talk. Thank you.
Thank you.
A question about the implementation of the models and tools being developed in your research. So I think the ultimate goal of developing the flood mapping as well as damage estimation is to guide the first responders and the federal agencies to help those affected residents and damaged infrastructures to recover to the pre-disaster phase. So I noticed that your research utilized a different type of data set, remote sensing, Twitter, and other supporting data set. But the availability of the data is limited by different policies. Like right now, the new CEO of Twitter has released new policies in terms of the use of APIs. In addition, the model results have to be delivered to the first responders so that they can be used in the practice. So speaking about the current and the future, would you mind to share a little bit of your insights and the professional opinions about how to implement the models and tools you developed in future emergency management? Thank you so much.
Yeah, excellent questions. I think regarding your first question about the data, for example, utilize the social media data, and there are many restrictions. For example, Twitter is no longer available. I think on one hand, there is indeed those data are not always because they come from the commercial social media platform, and there is a privacy issue imposed. So in that case, one aspect is the framework we are hoping is we gradually want to not just utilize the social media platform to collect the citizen contributed data sets. We also, one of the effort we are right now working on is develop the mobile platform as a citizen engagement effort, which actually FEMA also has such a platform, but it's not publicly available. So we have an initial mobile app developer. So basically, if the citizens in the community, they witness any disaster relevant things like flooded, damaged vehicles, they can report the information, send it to us, and based on the information, we can do the modeling process. And which that comes to the next question is for how can we really engage citizens and also engage first responders to utilize the output of the modeling. And well, that's really a challenge. And we have, because the one issue is because we are located in the Madison area, so there's not too many flood occurred in this local area. So the engage outreach part is not very so the model is not very used used at the community level, but hopefully we can continue promote our effort and in terms of the data collection in citizen engagement, as well as the hopefully impact the really useful at the response first responder level. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. I believe after the talk today, when the video is shared on the web on the internet, many first responders may reach out to you and ask for collaborations very soon.
Yeah, hopefully.
Thank you, and also thanks to Dr. Wu, Dr. Chen for organizing and chairing the session.
Yeah, and thanks a lot. And I think we have over 3 minutes of our talk. So I need to close this session. And I would take this opportunity to thank Dr. Huang and also Dr. Wu again for this webinar. And also for our audience, thanks a lot for your joining. And let's meet each other next week. Yeah, thanks a lot.
Yeah, take care, everyone. See you next week at the same time.
Next week.
And
yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Huang, and also Dr. Chen for moderating the webinar. Have a good weekend, everyone. See you. I'll post a video on the WeChat group later today or tomorrow. And so, if you have any questions, let me know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See you.
See you. Bye.
Mm-hmm.